Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first of our 2023 Black History Month Educational Lunch and Learns. Today's topic will be racial justice in mental health care. I'm your host, Nicole Favors. I'm joined today by our panelists, Dr. Stephen Carlson, Dr. Sangeetha Sutton, Dr. Camille Archer, Kano Bob, and Philip Kierstead. We're going to start our session today with a video. Following that video, there will be a brief question and answer period along with conversation from our panelists. I'm going to ask everyone to please remain muted until that time, and then we will try to get to as many questions as we can. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the video.
Hi, good afternoon. I was hoping to hear some information or some thoughts about why people of color tend to be apprehensive about accessing mental health services in our communities.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Philip Kierstead. To shed a light on your question in regards to the apprehensiveness, the hesitation of people of color coming to seek services, we have to look back historically. Historically, the experiences that they have had, whether it was other experiments that were documented, stereotypical stigmas that were placed with people of color. And again, when you connect it, you think about trust. There has been a lot of mistrust through the African-American community, basically. So when there are issues that they seek to get some type of support or information to, they're very hesitant, and identification is one of the things that they look to be able to engage and reveal whatever their issues are. So as an institution in the community, one of our most important things is that the identity is that we look somewhat the same, of a color, person of a color, which is one factor. But then the other main factor is establishing a comfortability in an exchange of trust. An exchange of trust in the fact of identifying and being able to be an effective listener, which can help reduce some of those barriers that a lot of our people of color continue to face. So what OBH is continuing to do is being able to present a safe environment to be able to create a dialogue within the community and within their own institution where we can begin to address those issues. So for me, from a substance abuse perspective, one of the things that they have started, what they continue to put in place, which is now an integrative program which consists of substance disorders as well as mental health disorders and health. Because we know with people of color, we have a lot of health disparities as well as have faced a lot of health disparities as well as underlying comorbidities. So the program, which is called Integrated Program in Bishop Walker Clinic, is a program that allows a person to be all those areas of their life to be treated. And in that aspect, it allows them to have an opportunity to have a cohesive approach to helping them start to address those issues.
Also, thank you for that, Philip. Also to add to that, I was looking to see if Dr. Sutton was on, because we talked about this yesterday and we'll see it in the video as well. You know, the apprehension, there are historical reasons for the apprehension as well. And they go as far back as slavery, where a slave who tries to run away was considered mentally ill. Right now, the name of the diagnosis escapes me, but there was a diagnosis given to slaves who tried to escape. Now, Dr. Sutton yesterday also talked about that in terms of the mental illness with African Americans, when they started doing the census way back when, the census started to ask about idiocy and lunacy, which were the words for mental illness. And interestingly enough, the Blacks in the North seem to have a very high rate of idiocy and lunacy, and the Blacks in the South had a low rate. And this was used to justify perpetuating slavery, because they said that Blacks who are free develop mental illness. It's not good for them. It's better for them to be slaves. Now, so that's where some of this apprehension starts, because from the inception of us being here, there were issues in regards to mental health and stigma. Now, there is such a thing as intergenerational trauma and epigenetics, where your genes can actually change based on trauma and your environmental experiences. So you start with that, and by and large, the society that we live in, and the society that most Blacks from in the African diaspora, whether it's the Caribbean, the United States, or the mainland of Africa, or pretty much all around the world, there's a negative stigma as far as mental health goes. And with the lack of access historically, they have been exposed to more severely ill, untreated, mentally ill people. So no one wants to be associated with that. Nobody wants to be considered quote unquote crazy or mad. So seeking mental health, seeking help for mental health issues is not something that would be really encouraged within the community. So those are some of the reasons as well. Some other reasons are generally not just lack of knowledge about what mental health is or what can be done and what kind of support can be offered. Because some people, what they see is people who with severe mental illness. So if they don't have illnesses like that, they can't imagine that that they need to seek help from a mental health provider. And with other issues with medicine in general, because it doesn't only apply to psychiatry, but other issues with medicine in general, where there was reason for mistrust. I think probably the most significant example is the Tuskegee experiment, but there were more issues, or there are other examples like that as well. So I think it's lack of trust in medicine itself, the stigma onto mental, as far as mental health goes, as well as intergenerational trauma in regards to being labeled as somebody who is mentally ill. So there are a lot of reasons, but those are some of the factors. So I think it's really good that we are Brookdale is within the community, and we offer mental health services for adults and children, because it breaks down that barrier of access. And just being, for our hospital to be culturally competent, that's very important, because that can really help in increasing the trust within the community for mental health care. So, that's some of the reasons I would say. I'm not sure if Dr. Sutton is on, but we did discuss this yesterday.
Okay, I believe we have the video working. We're going to try this again. And now, of course. Okay. We're still having technical difficulty. Please bear with me 1 minute. Can you see the video?
No.
Great. Let's try this again. All right.
They said you found one.
Can you see the video?
Yes.
Videos.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Now it's still not playing the sound, correct?
We can't see the video.
We don't even see the video anymore.
Oh, come on. I'm not sure why this is happening. I apologize, everyone.
I'd love to help. If you want to send a link to me, I can try to see if I can share it.
Let's try that. Who am I sending the link to? I apologize.
I'm gonna put my email in the chat box.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That is very critical that we all join in and support
Yes.
each other.
Right.
Okay.
So if anyone has a question, again, particularly my background, over 25 years in addiction treatment, addiction disorder. I always have to ask myself what motivated me to be a part of this. I don't know, for some reason, I say a struggle in helping people of color. One is that I grew up in the communities that we're constantly in, whether it's East Brooklyn or South Brooklyn. And in seeing that and being in the beginning a product of my environment due to unawareness and lack of information, I was always taught that we always work as a collective for family, because growing up, we all looked out for each other. So at some point, a point of separation had taken place and within the community, and I was always wondering what it was. So that's when a lot of people started being introduced to the substances as I developed. A lot of it was close to home. And yesterday during the our video shoot, we were talking about, and I gave some statistics post-pandemic, which were very alarming. For 2021, there were like 93,655 overdoses, whether they were fentanyl related. And then the next year, 2022, had increased to a level of 107,000. I didn't really.
All right, my dear, I'm on a Zoom meeting. What's up?
Oh, nothing much.
Oh, bye.
Please
You
mute
asked
your
me
phone.
something?
Please mute your computer.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. When I looked at the alarming numbers for 2021, 22, 107,000, that's when it became a little emotional for me. And I didn't really express that on our first conference conversation, but the fact is I pretty much mustered to be able to share this and to understand why my passion is a lot more stronger. In 2022 of August, I'm coming up on the anniversary of the loss of my son. My son, which I discovered in his loss, was to an oral ingested fentanyl overdose. He was 20 years old. His birthday was the following month, which would have been May 18th. My son wasn't, he was a good son, but he wasn't involved with substances. And the way that it happened for him, as well as a lot of those other people that's in those statistics, because they're humans, right? And that's what we do. We treat humans, and we have to remind ourselves of valuing that. So when I got the information and I followed up, I was informed that a so-called friend, he said he wasn't feeling too comfortable. And what happened was he gave him what he thought was a Tylenol, which was later on discovered it was a counterfeit fake pill, press pill, fentanyl. And he ingested it, and that night he didn't wake back up. So for me, I first didn't believe if I can continue to go on. But then I realized, and I said to myself, this is what I've been doing prior to, because when we provide services, we give voices to the people that are unable to express the pain, the trauma. And what we do is we create an atmosphere to be able to engage them. So in my moments of experience that intensity, I just reflected and said that it would make it more passionate for me to continue to help those that have not developed a voice, to be able, because of historic trust issues and trauma, to be able to have an environment where they can feel comfortable and safe enough to be able to assess some care so that they can be able to be a productive individual or a stable individual. The face of substance abuse, as well as treatment, is continuing to take a different direction. If we look at things right now, the legalization of cannabis, marijuana, so to speak. But in the same token, when we're talking about the distrust, the criminal justice is attaching a criminal element to something that they're saying is legal. And how I explain that is the fact is that now you see a lot of public announcements and education awareness of the fact of people not driving under the pair of marijuana or under the influence of marijuana. So there is an attached criminal justice element to that. And a lot of times people are looking to engage in a substance because they may be in pain and have not identified the sources of pain. But in that immediate engagement, there is a criminal element that they may put themselves in a perspective to hinder them getting certain access to social economical things, as well as employment and things of that importance. So treatment, again, the level of the face of treatment, marijuana and other substances can become addictive or dependent. People can become dependent on those substances. So we need to be available to be able to provide treatment and look at the criteria of admissions, because that is really important. When a person is eager after they have experienced traumatic situations, whether it was an overdose that they was brought back from with Narcan, and they willing to seek treatment, the most important thing is being able to be in a position to provide that treatment for them. And one of the things that we need to re-examine, and this could be the state of SAMHSA, the organization of SAMHSA, as well as OASIS, the criteria for admissions. Because again, if a person is willing to come in because they have an issue or their loved one brought them in and they're not able to access that treatment, it becomes devastating on them as a whole, as well as their family. So we have a lot of things in place, but in the same token, we need to really revisit our policies in regards to continuing to make it a little more broader for people to have access, because I don't think rejection is a good feeling. And rejection is more intense when you have mustered yourself or convinced or motivated yourself to seek help and the help is not available. As one of the people on the front lines, I know what that is close up. I know what that is from a perspective of experience. So that is one of the things in approaching the person that comes in seeking that help. And if we're not in a position to help them in the organization, it's imperative that we refer them to somewhere that can help them. And that's what is a strong motivating factor of me being part of this institution of OBH Brooklyn 1, because it's within the community and we have to be able to be attentive and hear the climate, because the environment has changed. And I've always said that if one doesn't understand the environment, they remain vulnerable. And understanding your environment is education and information. We are an institution that are engaging in outreach, but then one of the biggest things is, again, creating that comfortable and that safe environment and bridging that trust gap that's there as an individual or as a professional. So that is one of the main motivating reasons why I had no hesitation to becoming part of this panel as part of a voice for the voiceless or those that are mustering some type of initiative to be able to speak.
Which doll is the black doll? And which one is the white doll? Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Why? And you have 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Which doll looks most like you?
Like me.
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay. Which doll is?
Should I continue to play it?
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of One Brooklyn Health, we'd like to welcome you to the first in a series of panels that One Brooklyn Health is putting on in honor of Black History Month. The title of today's panel is Racial Justice and Mental Health. I'd like to first introduce one of our experts in mental health. She's a psychiatrist in child and adolescent psychiatry, and she is director of outpatient child mental health. And she's going to talk to us about Black pioneers in mental health.
Hello, thanks for that introduction, Dr. Carlson. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. That video that you guys saw, I don't know about you, but it gets me every time. We do want to honor the creators of that experiment, the Clarks. The Clarks is a husband and wife team. They were the first and second Black psychologists to get a PhD from Columbia. And this experiment, as you can see that video, that looks pretty modern, but the first time this experiment was done, it was back in the 1940s. And it's amazing that it still resonates today. The experiment did play a big part in Brown versus the Board of Education to desegregate. The intention of the experiment initially was to show the effect of segregation on African American children, how it damaged their self-esteem and how they perceive themselves and their community. So it's amazing that even though it was done in 1940, we're still seeing the effects of that today. So we really want to honor the Clarks for their contribution to mental health and what they have done and continue to do for our community even long after they're gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Archer. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
So as we said, the title of today's panel is Racial Justice in Mental Health Care, Fostering a Dialogue in Brooklyn. So we'd really like, although this is being pre-recorded, we hope to have a question and answer period and be available to get input from the community about your thoughts about what's going on in terms of mental health and how One Brooklyn Health can do a better job of reaching out to the community. And as we're starting off February Black History Month, Dr. Archer just celebrated some of the achievements and accomplishments of Black Americans such as the Clarks. And it's also a time to reflect on the realities of racism and the injustices that occur, and to champion a fairer, more equitable future. The past few years have seen traumatic events that have captured headlines and sparked discussions on racial injustice. But discussions can end, headlines can move on, and vital change is still needed. Inequity or unequal opportunity, socioeconomic access persist in mental health care, and there's mistrust in our healthcare system across the board. The theme of Black History Month is Black resistance, in recognition of those who have fought against oppression. This February, remember the heroes of Black history. So with that in mind, we're going to open it up, and I'm going to first introduce our four panelists. As I've already introduced Dr. Archer, who's a child and adolescent psychiatrist, who will be one of our four panelists. Then we'll move on to Dr. Sajitha Sutton, who is an administrator at Interfaith. She is a doctor of psychology, has worked at IMC or Interfaith since 2008. And she's now serves as Assistant Vice President for Behavioral Health with a focus on outpatient programs, housing programs, as well as addiction and recovery services. Welcome, Dr. Sutton.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Kano Bob, who's a social worker. He's been at Interfaith, working as both a psychotherapist and a social worker, and he graduated from Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College. Welcome, Kano. Our next speaker or panelist is Philip Kierstead. Mr. Kierstead is a native of Brooklyn, and he has a master's in education from Fordham University. He's had over 25 years of experience in the field of substance use disorder treatment, and he's worked at Interfaith for years in the chemical dependency outpatient services. Welcome, Mr. Kierstead.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And with that, we are going to so I'd like to start off by just asking a question of each of our panelists. And that question is just, we have a child and adolescent psychiatrist, we have a psychotherapist, social worker dealing with, regular, just outpatient, mental health concerns. We have someone who's a specialist in substance use, and then we have someone who's administrator. So we hope to get their experience and their understanding of these various topics. So the first general question is, have you experienced patients who mistrust the mental health care system? And, how do you help patients overcome mistrust? And how do you think One Brooklyn Health can do a better job of earning the trust of our community? Dr. Archer, would you like to begin?
Sure. Yes, I've encountered patients like that. You know, the mistrust of the mental healthcare system, it's something that, you know, there are a lot of factors that cause the mistrust. Even the video that we just saw, you could think about if a child believes that the Black person or the Black doll is bad, why would you trust someone who you think is bad? So even if you have providers that look like you, because of intergenerational trauma, you know, that mistrust could be that perception that, you know, the person is not good, they're not that experienced, they don't know what they're doing because they are Black. Also, the mistrust comes because of the mental health system in general, that there's a lot of stigma. And there is a lot of stigma in mental health across the board, no matter what background you look at, but the stigma also exists within the African diaspora. And when you take a group of people who with different experiences, but a common experience of being a minority in a country where they do experience discrimination and racism, and then you add something that's considered pejorative or negative on top of it, that's going to lead to more feelings of negativity towards mental health. So that can be very dismissive of psychiatry and mental health and not want to participate in the process at all. The way OBH and just providers in general, the way we can overcome that mistrust is, one, to educate. Education really puts everyone at ease. And the other thing is to listen. The mistrust is coming from somewhere. It's not coming out of the air. It is coming from somewhere, and we have to understand the perspective of the patient and understand why they're fearful. You know, we're coming from a system of mental health where mental health, people have been locked up against their will, people have been shamed or ostracized from a family. So to be labeled or given any kind of mental health diagnosis, it's more, there's even more significance. So education is first, to educate them to understand why we're trying to help them, and also to understand what we have seen from what they have told us, but also to listen to them about why they don't want to take medication, why they don't want to come for treatment, why they don't trust the help that we're going to provide. So I think education is key, but listening is also the other key. And it's no surprise to anyone that in the field of medicine, you know, with the past in terms of things that have happened to the African American community, with things like the Tuskegee experiment, and various other medical experiments that were done, that's where a lot of the mistrust is also coming from. And so we have to be compassionate. So I would say, be compassionate, listen, and educate. That's how we get people to trust, and be patient as well.
Thank you, Dr. Archer.
Definitely.
So, you know, you highlighted the importance of trying to, you know, fully make our or help our patients understand where we're coming from, but also to really listen to them and understand where they're coming from. And great. So just as a little bit of background, maybe we can switch to Dr. Sutton, who could provide some of the historical context that Dr. Archer started to talk about, and how that you know, still plays a role today in terms of our understanding and feelings towards mental health from the African diasporic community.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. You know, a lot of times we today in 2023 may have certain experiences and feelings and not quite know where they're coming from. And so, you know, given that this is Black History Month, we wanted to take a look historically at some of the have occurred in this country that impact us in 2023. So we started off looking at the video here with that occurred in the doll experiment that occurred in 1946. But I wanted to go back 100 years to 1840. And that was when they took a census. It was the 6th census in the United States that ever occurred. As we all know, the census is taken every 10 years. And this was the first time that they asked questions about mental health. And in this, so this was pretty big. And in this census back then, they asked 2 questions about mental health. Because of the terminology that they used back then, the questions were around idiocy and insanity. And they sent agents out through the north, through the south, the east, the west coast, big cities, small areas, plantations, areas where free people lived, and interviewed everyone, asking them all sorts of questions about the jobs that they had, how many people were in their household, and whether or not they also asked questions about mental illness, idiocy, and insanity. The outcome of this this census was quite interesting. Someone named Keen Davis did some research, because immediately after the census, they started saying that this looks a little bit suspicious. So he did some research on this, and he found that the outcome of the census in 1840 showed that the majority of white Americans, both in the North and the South, suffered the same rate of mental illness. However, for the Blacks in the South, the rate of mental illness was low, and the rate of mental illness was more than double for free Blacks in the North. So people immediately started to complain, but at the same time, those who were pro-slavery used this as propaganda to support the ideas for slavery. They even used new mental health terms to support it. One medical doctor coined the term drapetomania, which basically said that slaves who ran away were mentally ill and they needed to be treated. And the best treatment for them was a beating. All of this promote propaganda to say that African Americans, Blacks, slaves, particularly the free slaves, could not handle freedom, and they needed slavery to help keep them sane. And so that helped to promote slavery, to promote racism throughout the country. And it informed policies that Congress would make. There was a complaint against this census back then, and Congress investigated and found that the numbers were correct, even though they were grossly exaggerated. Fast forward 100 years to doctors and Dr. Clark, who did the experiment and found that the impact of this racism really impacted our children. We all know that children are a reflection of society. They show what we believe, how we feel, and they show it back to us. And so this experiment was very powerful. And like Dr. Archer mentioned, it was used to really help with desegregation of our schools. And as a result, all of us now benefit from that study. Fast forward to today, another 100 years later, the Clarks, I forgot to mention, they worked in Harlem, and they created the Northside Center for Children, and it still is open today in Harlem, which is nice to see that their work continues even to today. So I think that the things that happened in the 1800s all the way to now really impacted how we see mental health, how individuals feel about themselves. And the newest stats as of 2020, according to SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Association, is a federal agency, shows that individuals of African descent suffer the same or slightly less rates of mental illness than the white counterparts. However, for substance abuse, it's a little bit different. The rates are slightly higher for those of African descent versus those who are white or non-colored, non-Hispanic and whites together. So I do really believe, and I think the panel agrees with me, that the experiences that happened in the past really impact what's happening today. So much so that I think cultural competency is very important in terms of treating the patients that come through our doors. And that's something that OBH is really working on. We work in a neighborhood that is predominantly of African descent, and we need to provide them with the best care possible, despite all of the experiences that are happening in our society.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sutton. So, we had some historical context from Dr. Sutton discussing the 1840 census and the way that it was used as propaganda to support racist strategies to oppress people of African descent at that time. And obviously that would generate distrust, being that it was, numbers being collected by the federal government. And moving on, Dr. Sutton discussed, reviewed again the Clarks, and then these issues of mistrust for the healthcare system can persist today. I think many people in our community could give their own personal stories as to something that maybe happened in the emergency room or in their visit with a doctor or what have you, where they felt like they weren't listened to or were not treated, with the same respect and empathy and care that maybe other patients receive. And so we're here to discuss this dialogue. We're going to move on to our next panelist, Mr. Kano Bob, who is an interfaith. And would you like to talk about some of your experiences of patients perhaps mistrusting the system and how you might manage that, or any experiences that you would like to discuss?
Well, thank you so much for being on this panel. Dr. Carlson, Dr. Archer, and Dr. Sutton. Philip, it's a pleasure to be here. And I think we're all hitting the nail on the head at this point. We come together for a pleasant and an educational reason. Dr. Sutton mentioned the history of it, right? And I would like to just piggyback on that a bit in terms of the generational, I want to call it the generational curse, right? That has been probably implanted or implemented within the Black community, within the Black household, in terms of mental illness, right? And these are the things that maybe 100 years down the line that we're dealing with now, the cause and the effect, right? Because generationally, we had our ancestors dealing with mental illness, and they were coined with lunatic, lunacy, deranged, you need to be locked up, throw away the key, institutionalized. So let's say, for instance, an individual was to come out and to be bred into this conditioning, this mental conditioning. So from that point on, any individual that's been coined with a mental illness would be labeled as, deranged. The topic would probably be taboo, right? There would be no further conversation based upon treatment. There was probably no known sense of treatment for this, but being locked away. So generationally, this has been handed down from, parent to child to child. So now when we're faced with the reality of dealing with individuals with mental illness, right, they're not too prone to seek assistance, not prone to seek help, right? I recently read an article in terms of the percentages for mental illness within people of color, Black and Latin, Hispanic individuals are less than non-blacks and non-whites, but the condition persists way longer for people of color and for blacks, right? There are less of the individuals with the conditions, but the symptoms and the stages are persistent longer. And that struck me because if we are less, how come our symptoms are persisting longer? And that brings to mind that, you know what, probably not seeking help, right? And generationally, I want to just highlight that as well. You know, and it's just like a taboo. So I think the more that we, as professionals, the more that we educate, you know, the more that we inform, the more that we encourage, you know, we allow individuals to be more aware, right, of the mental health condition. And I think we should be able to reach more people. And I know, for instance, it'll be easier when we have these discussions, right, that we can come forth with solutions to these problems and make things easier for us as professionals and even for our clients and the people that we work with, right, to be more cognizant of the effects of mental illness and the affordability and the accessibility for mental health treatment.
Thank you, Mr. Bob. I appreciate your contributions to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Today, you know, we believe and we understand from genetics and biology and everything that we're all the same. You know, for years we were incorrectly taught that somehow people of African descent, their biology was different, and therefore they were more prone, perhaps, to mental illness or these sorts of things. But today we understand the reasons are very different from what they used to say. We understand now that you know, as Mr. Bob just highlighted, the reasons that the illness is more severe, perhaps, is because because the community lacks access and has stigma, and also racism gets under our skin and affects our biology. And there's this long history that Dr. Sutton talked about of trauma that also gets under our skin and affects, you know, our mental health. So with that in mind, we'll move on to our next panelist, Mr. Kierstead. Would you like to discuss from your perspective and in your long experience of working with substance abuse clients, what you've experienced and how you manage that mistrust in our community?
Okay, first I would like to first thank the esteemed panel members that I have the distinct pleasure of being a part of as well. And the level of information and resources. As I sit here and strive to answer the question that you posed, I look back always at history and how it impacts and motivates an individual. And me being able to be on this panel, and over these years, I've realized that a lot of people have been stigmatized. There has been a lot of pain, a lot of disenfranchised information as well. So to be here today is the goal, to be a part of an institution, to be able to bring information and education to those that are in need. The question, people that come in with struggles with trust, being a clinician in substance abuse, one of the most important things that I've encountered was people use because they are in pain. And in being in pain, part of my job is to try to embrace a person to feel comfortable to be able to express their voice. Because humanity, that's how I look at it. We are looking at African Americans, but as a whole, everybody's a priceless individual, and that we're here to provide information and service. So when they come in and they are very isolated my first approach is to listen, very attentive, very important, and to hear what they're not saying. Second is to strive to make a comfortable and a safe environment so that a person can be able to share at whatever point what direction or what assistance they may need. My main goal is to provide resources. I always at times look at myself as a librarian, an individual with a wealth of resources. And I know when we're able to connect with resources, our esteem goes up, we're a lot more motivated. So being part of this establishment of One Brooklyn, there's a wealth of information and resources here. So growing up in Brooklyn and experiencing some of the disenfranchising and seeing some of the traumas, I couldn't just sit back and not be a willing advocate and be able to support those such as myself. So by being here today, it gives me great inspiration and esteem to be able to talk about personal experience as well as the collective of the panel members. So we have to be honest in our approach. Honesty creates success. So if we're honest in our approach to the people that come in that have may experience several different traumas, that then they can be able to identify. And once they are identify the genuineness, then the process begins. It can become frustrating at times when people are not willing to reveal themselves, but we have to first, as providers and professionals, understand their journey. And how we can understand that is that we have to do a lot more attentive listening. So once again, being an attentive listening, at some point, the person would feel a safe environment and they will start to reveal. So that is part of one of the most important and critical techniques of approach as an individual, is to be honest and create that atmosphere.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kierstead. So it sounds like all of our panelists so far have mentioned the importance of respecting individuals and really showing them that we care by listening to them carefully and being genuine, as you said, Mr. Kierstead. And also, as Dr. Sutton mentioned earlier, being culturally responsive and providing services to them in a way that, that makes sense to them. So with that in mind, I'd like to move to another question for our panel. This question, is more about, from your perspective as a clinician working inside One Brooklyn Health, how could OBH or One Brooklyn Health, both Brookdale and Interfaith, how could we improve our services to the community of the Black community in Central and East Brooklyn? What could we do? How could we do better? Or in some cases, what are we already doing to try to make some improvements? So can we start with Dr. Archer?
Hi, let's start with what we could do better. I think we can go more into the community to embrace other people or other organizations or other agencies that are also trying to help, to do this more as a community rather than the individual institutions. So, I mean, schools, churches, recreational centers, other places where people go for help, other medical providers, to really reach out into the community so that OBH mental health has a face out in the community. For people to be aware that we're here and what we offer. So I think that's what we can do. But I do think we're doing well. I'll speak from the perspective of child psychiatry, child and adolescent psychiatry, and some of this may also apply to the adult psychiatry at the campus where I am at Brookdale, is that we do have services that we can provide. There are a lot of communities that do not have a psychiatric emergency room, and we offer that. We offer that for children, and we offer that for adults. A lot of places also don't have an outpatient, and we have for children and adults as well. And we have inpatient units for children 13 and under, and we also have inpatient units for adults. So I think those are things that we are doing well in that we have services that we can provide. The important thing for those services to be known are really to go out into the community and work with other community leaders, other community members, to foster what I would say it takes a village approach to dealing with mental health as it relates to the African diaspora within Brooklyn and just people of color.
Thank you, Dr. Archer. So One Brooklyn Health could do has a lot more work it could do in terms of reaching out to the community and reaching out to church, as you said, and collaborating with other community agencies to find out how we can best address their needs. The other thing I heard you mention is One Brooklyn Health does have a full spectrum of services available, and in the child and adolescent mental health arena. So next, Dr. Sutton, you are an administrator. Perhaps you don't have as much clinical experience, but maybe you could speak to some of the overall services that One Brooklyn Health does provide, or to focus on the needs of our community, and also how you think we could do better.
Yes, so we, in addition to the services that Dr. Archer just mentioned, we do have other services for adults and children at the Interfaith campus, which includes different sites. So we're kind of spread out through the Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights area. We have been actually making an effort to outreach to the community. This is one way, right? We're going to be like on YouTube and Facebook, and I guess it'll be online forever. So that will be one resource that the community can use. And in the summertime and in the spring months, we do a lot of outreach as well. And I think we could always do more. But we participate in community fairs, we go to schools. We have a Narcan program here where we go to schools and colleges and community fairs and teach people how to use Narcan.
What is Narcan, Dr. Sutton?
So Narcan is an overdose prevention drug that is available free here in New York City for anyone that overdoses on opioids. We all know that we're in the middle of an opioid epidemic, and so our staff go out into the community and teach individuals how to appropriately use the Narcan to save a friend, family member. We also give Narcan to our patients on the inpatient unit when they're leaving, as well as the outpatient units. And speaking of inpatient units, in addition to what Dr. Archer just described, we have inpatient adult psychiatric units here. And I want to brag a little bit because I think one of the issues historically as Black Americans is that when you seek mental health treatment, the provider does not necessarily look like you, which can increase the chances of distrust, misunderstandings, discomfort, stigma, everything. And I'm glad that our staff is now more culturally diverse than I think it's ever been. We have people of African descent here, as well as individuals from all over the world. Sometimes when I sit in the inpatient unit, I feel like I'm in the UN There's all these different accents, and when we have food, all different kinds of food that we can taste and enjoy. So I think it's more reflective of the community that we serve. And that's something that we're going to have to continue to strive to do, when people leave and new people come in, to make sure that there's a balance. We also have an inpatient substance abuse program. We talked earlier about the fact that the rates of substance abuse are slightly higher among Black Americans. And like Philip Kierstadt just mentioned, it's definitely because of all the pain. And there's a lot of stuff that we want to numb that's happening in our society, happening in our homes, happening internally. And, I was remembering that during the pandemic, we had to come to work because we were in hospital, so we came every day. And I would drive by and everything was closed around here except one thing, the liquor store. And I don't know how they got to stay open. And it disturbed me that it was open, because I knew that people were numbing, people were in pain, and the drug was easily accessible. I also know that you can have any kind of drug delivered to your house. Just like you can have food delivered, you can have it delivered. So it continued even throughout the pandemic. And so we continue to provide services to address that need, both on an inpatient basis as well as outpatient. We have an outpatient substance abuse program, outpatient rehab, and as well as an outpatient opioid treatment program. So all of those things, I think we really strive, maybe not perfectly, but we really strive to provide the services that our community needs. Another problem that our community has is housing. We also know that Brooklyn is incredibly expensive, and it's getting more and more expensive by the day. Low income housing is not even affordable. And so, especially for people who have mental illness, you're on SSI, you're on disability, and the prices are skyrocketing. That increases the chances of homelessness. It increases all of the stressors, which can, really cause whatever illnesses you're having to worsen. So we provide an alternative housing program. That program is a scattered site housing. It's not like one building where all the apartments are. They're scattered throughout the neighborhood, so that we can teach individuals who have mental illness to live successfully in the community. Their neighbors may not know that we're there, but we're, teaching them to live a productive life in the community, rather than being locked up like what Mr. Bob talked about in previous years, where, you're just locked up and the key is thrown away. So those are some of the things that we do to really try to help our community and provide the services, in addition to outpatient mental health services.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sutton.
I'm done bragging.
You're definitely an advocate for One Brooklyn Health.
Yes, yes.
But I definitely heard that, there's a lot of services that One Brooklyn Health does provide. And during COVID, we didn't shut down. We remained open, attempting to serve the community as best we could, that we hung in there for the community and to try to help them. And
Dr. Carlson, may I add one more thing?
yes.
So even though our staff are diverse, I think one thing that we really should focus on, and just going through this process has reminded me of it, is that we need to really make sure that our staff are culturally competent. When I was in school, it feels like 1,000 years ago, it was usually just like one chapter for the whole semester, and then we would move on. And I think that that's something that we really need to focus on as part of like continuing education, where it's not just something that's just tacked on as an afterthought, but something that, like we make a conscious effort to educate our staff.
Okay.
Now I'm done bragging.
Thank you, Dr. Sutton. And one of the other things that Dr. Sutton highlighted, other than myself, which is a bit of an elephant in the room, I am an ally here for Black History Month. And as the moderator, I'm proud of many of the things that One Brooklyn Health has done, but I know that we have a lot more to do. And I'm glad we're having this dialogue today with 4 panelists who are clinicians within our Department of Psychiatry that, as Dr. Sutton mentioned, is more reflective of the community we serve, which we hear from many surveys, even from recent surveys this past year, that our community wants people that understand them, look like them, talk like them, and can really hear what they have to say. So thank you very much, Dr. Sutton. So I'd like to move on to Mr. Bob. Any input you have on how One Brooklyn Health could improve mental health care services for the Black community in Central and East Brooklyn?
Well, I must say that being an individual, like I consider myself a frontline worker, right? I consider myself being on the front lines. I'm in the trenches. I'm working individually with people. And I could honestly say, like, going into the main campus, which is on Interfaith on Atlantic Avenue, and just walking in the hallway, and I'm hearing all the accents, right? I feel like welcomed, like I'm a part of, right? And as a clinician walking in, and I'm hearing Caribbean, from all the different diasporas, and I'm like, okay, this is like home, right? So I want that feeling that I embody when I walk in. I want the clients from our community, when they come in, right, to feel that same sense of ease, right? That same sense of being at home, that welcoming feeling. Because as being a Brooklyn-born individual myself within this same community, I see the drastic changes that has taken place over the last 10 to 20 years. Right. And a lot of the people that I know that I grew up with and I've seen for generations, again, are no longer here. Right. So there's a lot of misplacement that's been taking place within our community. Right. So for the mere fact that you can have welcoming, caring healthcare professionals, right, being a staple, One Brooklyn Health has provided so many options and opportunities for people to feel welcome and receive services, to have that, to be here as one of those individuals is paramount, right? Because that same welcoming feeling that I experience every time that I walk in, right? I want the clients to feel the same thing, right? That empathy, that understanding, that ease with which that they could come in and share of themselves, right? Because this is just more than an individual that's coming in to talk. People want to come in, they want to feel safe. Primarily, you want to feel safe. You want to know that they're coming in and they're getting services done in an environment where they're welcomed and they feel comfortable, right? So that promotes ease, it promotes general mental health, right? And when you're receiving services from someone that somewhat looks like you, or may not even look like you, but have an understanding of where you've been and where you come from and the things that you've experienced, that brings you so much more at ease, and you just feel welcome. Right. So One Brooklyn Health, in my opinion, has done and provided a lot of services, a lot of opportunities. Like I said, as a clinician on the front line, at this outpatient clinic, I would love to implement more of a group setting. Right. I know we are barely over the pandemic and groups have been restricted within our facilities, but I'd love to implement more groups. I specifically started like a men's group a few months ago, and I think it's so important to have, people of color, men specifically, to come in, right? So we could discuss topics more than just, sports, current events, which are also inclusive, but health, physical health, right? Get those colonoscopies, those prostate examinations, right? We talk about budgeting, finance, things of that nature, right? And as fathers, I give it up to the women. We hear a lot about single women, strong women. What about the single fathers? What about those Black fathers that are, taken away from the household, right? We'd be labeled angry Black men. So we need to come together and we could discuss this thing so we could be less angry Black men, But I would definitely love to have more group activity for for our clients, so they could get together and just have a sense of oneness and understanding. I think it's paramount to this experience.
Mr. Bob Kano, thank you for your contributions. One of the things that you reminded me of during COVID, we were reminded that organizations, healthcare and otherwise, we needed to take care of our workers, of our employees, and pay attention to their health so that they could take care of the community. And it was really heartwarming to hear you say that when you walk in to Interfaith, you feel like you're at home and you feel connected. And
Great.
we hope that experience that you have is something that we can extend to our patients, certainly. And there were many other important points you mentioned, and we appreciate them. Ways that we can reach out to the community, maybe that are innovative, or new channels or ways that we haven't thought of before, to try to make sure that they hear the information that we have. Okay, well, next, Mr. Kierstead, we'd like to conclude the panel by hearing your input on how One Brooklyn Health could maybe improve mental health care services for our community.
Okay, I would like to start at real time. Right now, what we're providing here internally, sharing, Dr. Sutton shared all the different departments and services. Sometimes we have an institution where we all work in, but some of us may not know the existing programs. By educating the staff, by informing the staff, a better internal individual becomes a greater external individual. Now, the community, when I look again, it affects my effectiveness is measured by how I feel about myself and what I'm a part of. And when I look at it and it says One Brooklyn, that means one. That means everybody as a collective. We all have a collective responsibility. So once we have that, now we have to put the plan together. When you ask the question, what is it that we're doing? And Dr. Sutton didn't mention one of the new initiatives.
You're right.
Of the integrative program here at Bishop Walker, but if it's at a year ago, it was his first in the history of Brooklyn. And the integrative program, what it does is it covers the areas of mental health, substance abuse, and health, all under one roof. We would call it one-stop shop, because during assessment in the community, sometimes we have people that are scattered, going to different locations for different services, and can experience fatigue. So again, looking and saying, how can we become more effective in the community? If we have everything under one roof for you, people are very inspired to come. And once they come, again, our responsibility is to approach those stereotypicals, those struggles, and be able to provide that information. So it's been a year or so in the pilot of the program, which is entrenched inside of One Brooklyn Health. And I'm really appreciative and proud of being a part of that. I'm always looking to be a part of new initiatives because it's challenging. It's barriers you have to address. And when we reflect the pandemic, that's when we really got to understand now, because we post-pandemic, the impact that has affected people. And again, the reference of the only store that was available was the liquor store. And when we look at statistics, the statistics of 2021 with overdoses was over 93,000 in 2021. In 2020, in 2021, it increased to 107,000 of overdoses and fentanyl. And now, as a clinician, we're looking at the legalization of marijuana, but that also can be a dependent. So we have to be able to be equipped by additional training, by additional evidence-based approaches to be able to assist the individuals that are still coming in post-pandemic, and some that are very reluctant and hesitant to come in based on several other, whether it's mental health disorders or other traumas. So Interfaith, I honestly can say that we are developing the resources and outreach. We're doing that, but it needs to be done more. And in the fact that people feel comfortable that they can walk in here and receive premium service. Like Kino said, the fact is when he walks in there, he can understand and relate. So when they walk in there of different descents, that they feel that somebody's going to understand them and they can be able to express their voice. So I want to continue to be a part of that, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. That's true.
And I want to add, thank you, Philip, for like reminding me. I can't believe I forgot the integrated center at Bishop Walker. But I also wanted to add, like, the trauma. I think each person talked about trauma, and it's so real, even now. And it's kind of like in your face, in the news and social media. Last night when I went home, I watched part of the funeral service of Tyree, and it's just all around us. And I think one of the things that One Brooklyn Health is striving to do is to make sure that we provide trauma-informed treatment. In addition, we also want to take care of our workers. So this week, our CEO sent out an email acknowledging that if any worker is feeling traumatized by what's happening in the community, we have like EAP services, and they should reach out. EAP services is always here, but it was like nice to have a friendly reminder, like you can use this. Because when I finished watching the funeral, I was sad, but so there's services that, we want to take care of not only the community, but we have to take care of our staff so that they can continue to provide proper services. So that's one thing I think that One Brooklyn Health is striving to do. We're not perfect yet, but we're working on getting to that goal.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sutton, and thank you, Mr. Kierstead. We are at the conclusion of this panel today. I do want to thank everyone for participating. And as everybody could tell, there was a lot more that could be said, and each panelist I'm sure wants to keep on talking about these subjects. So hopefully this will be a beginning, and we'll have more of these panels in the future. And we look forward to addressing the community's questions, and we will be available live, hopefully on Friday, to answer questions from the community about the services that One Brooklyn Health provides in terms of mental health. And in conclusion, I'd like Mr. Bob is going to read a statement kind of summing up our panel today.
Well, thank you so much. First and foremost, I want to just, continuously extend my gratitude for this opportunity for the panelists. Dr. Carlson is being a moderator, Dr. Archer, Dr. Sutton, Mr. Kierstead. It's been a pleasure to be here. It's been a pleasure to stimulate a conversation. Black mental health is important. Black History Month is as equally as important. So I just want to say, as we continue to grapple with the overwhelming aspects of the COVID pandemic, people across our Central and East Brooklyn community have taken to the streets, staff meetings and boardrooms to demand change around systemic racism and its devastating effects. One Brooklyn Health acknowledges that many of the institutions throughout our country were founded upon and continue to perpetuate systemic racism. Our healthcare system, including behavioral health, is no exception and is rife with less obvious but deeply insidious examples of these inequities. We must address the persistent behavioral health disparities rooted in systemic racism and work to support our community in striving toward wellness and fight to improve healthcare access for the Black community. OBH hopes to eliminate some of the disparities and improve individual and community health in Central and East Brooklyn. As an organization, we vow to raise awareness about healthcare inequities experienced by people of color and continue to be committed to providing support to our patients as we begin addressing these inequities. To support the Black community in addressing racial inequities and the associated stigmas that lead to behavioral health disparities, and to ensure you have the tools to support the path toward wellness, OBH hosted this conversation in honor of Black History Month and has included resources that may be of interest.
Yes. At the conclusion of the question answer, we will share 2 phone numbers so that you can access resources at One Brooklyn Health. So thank you everyone for this panel today. This has been an exciting panel, and I think it's a great start toward our conversations to engage with the community. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Selena, I want to thank you for sharing the video. And now we're going to have a quick Q&A with our panel. In the interest of time, we're going to keep it kind of brief. I do have a question from Janet R. Would you please unmute yourself and ask your question? Janet R. Okay. Are you there? All right, so is there anyone else who has questions at this time?
I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but did you just call on me? I had a phone call.
I did, yes. I
Oh.
didn't end up to ask a question.
Yes, hi, good afternoon to everyone. I just wanted it to be known that I'm not as far as the professional panel, but I heard some of the topics, I heard some of the topics, of the things that you guys was addressing about, with the community, and what could be done, and I myself, am with a mental disorder, I'm sorry, depression and anxiety, and I'm also recovering. I'm in recovery from substance abuse. And I just want to say, I'm not going to be long. I just want to say that some of us, like myself, we kind of don't. So y'all have some good information, but we're not getting it. And so some of us, like, we don't watch the news because I don't really watch TV. It's kind of depressing for me. So some things y'all saying is good, but we don't know about it. We don't know about it. And I did hear someone say about coming out into the community, and I think that would kind of really be cool. You know what I mean? If a couple of people came out and you come again, that way you get in a relationship with the community, and then you can check with the community. You can check with us to see like what we think or how we can be helped. I'm gonna close with this. I have there was a newcomer that came into the rooms for recovery, and we got close, and she cried out, and it hurt my heart. She cried out because she has bipolar. She just discovered she had bipolar, and she's lost in the source. She didn't know what to do, where to go, who she could talk to, and I think that's all I'm gonna say right now. But I like what I'm hearing. But to be honest, I hope this is just not like one of these things where it's just for talk for the panel, because we really could use y'all's help. And if they come out to the community, it will be good. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Did any of our panelists want to address what Ms. Janet had to say?
Ms. Janet, I really appreciate that. I think you're absolutely correct. If we have these services, it is important to go out into the community so that people can find out how they can seek help. So I appreciate you sharing your story. And yes, I also agree that it shouldn't be just something for a panel now. This is something that should continue. And we have to make that commitment to start going out into the community and being a phase. Often when you're in a health provider position, whether you want to or not, you are in a position of leadership. And with communities that are, more marginalized or, have more problems, often you become a community leader, very similar to a pastor, a teacher, a principal, you know, because anyone that can be of support is important to help people along. So I agree with you, and thank you for that.
Do we have any other questions from the group? Or anything else that the panelists would like to say before we close out?
Good afternoon.
Yes.
My name is Cicely Wilkinson. I would just like to thank all the panelists for this interesting conversation and also some of the comments. I don't remember who said it, but he said that we need to provide all aspects of care under one roof. I do think this is very important because for the Black mental health patient, you know, you may get them to come one place, but when you're telling them then they have to go to another facility to get some more treatment, they may not be willing to do that. But if you can tell that person you only have to go downstairs or upstairs, I do think they will feel safer and they may be more willing to get the treatment. Also, it was very knowledgeable to hear that some of the Black community, they are less affected, but the symptoms last longer for mental health. And I do believe that is because of maybe lack of education or maybe the stigma. So getting out into the community at the grassroots levels to really share this information, I do think is very important. So thank you again for this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkinson. Panel, is there anything you wanted to say?
Sujita Sutton speaking. I just wanted to say thank you to both ladies for sharing and giving us feedback. We'll definitely work on going out into the community more. For Janet, who shared first, I'm going to put our phone number in the chat, and I think there's also a slide so that you can give your friend that you spoke about our number, and we can do a sister. So I'm going to put the number in the chat.
Thank you, Dr. Sutton.
Hi, good afternoon. Keno Bob here, one of the esteemed panelists. I just wanted to share one thing before I go. Unfortunately, today was a very hectic day for me. I came into work and I was called out because my son fell a bit ill. So right now I'm in the middle of picking up medications for him and stuff, and he's sitting right here. You know, and I'm just glad that he was able to somewhat hear this conversation, even though he has his AirPods on, but he's hearing because he's smiling at me right now. So I just think that it's imperative that as clinicians, particularly people of color, individuals within the community, I just think it's so imperative for us to be out there, you know, and to inform our youth. And if anything for One Brooklyn Health, moving forward, it's the engagement within the community, engagement and advocacy for our youth, you know, pertaining to mental health. When you look at society today is filled with circumstances that tend to destroy or aim to degrade and stereotype our communities, our people of color, our youth. So I would love for us as clinicians, as professionals, you know, as fathers, mothers, right, to advocate for our children and to keep them guarded, keep them guided, keep them safe from these stereotypes and these social media types that are predators, right? So it's imperative for us, you know, to get in tune with our community, to get in tune with our culture, right? To get in tune with our youth, right? Mental health is not something to shy away from. Mental illness is real, right? It's imperative for us to educate, you know, to empathize and to draw and to bring our people in, because it's our future that we're looking at, right? Our present is in peril. As we can see we turn the news each and every day, there's a case in which a young Black male is losing their life, whether it be based upon mental illness, ignorance of mental illness, or just ignorance of race, right? So I would just like to relay that message to get that point across, that we need to take heed and to be as adherent to our youth as possible, you know? And I just want to thank you all for being here. And I'm just welcome to be an active participant within our community and within our culture.
Thank you, Mr. Bob. Thank you, Mr. Bob. Is there anything else that we have to talk about right now? We don't want to keep everyone too long.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quick. I'm so sorry. I did see someone in the chat wanted just a little bit more information on NYPCC. My name is Dioris Valeria. Really quickly and briefly, I don't want to keep everyone. I didn't want to mispronounce your name, so I didn't really say the name that you requested the information. But my name is Dioris Valerio, and I'm actually one of the newest member of the outreach team here at the New York Psychotherapy and Counseling Center with my colleague, Selena LeBron. We are actually a counseling center that provides therapy for children, teens, and adults from 3 to 100 and beyond. So we are open 7 days a week, providing both in-person and telehealth sessions. We have bilingual staff as well as therapists and all those. Like I said, I am fairly new, so I am going to switch over to Ms. Selena. That way she can give you more in-depth and full spectrum of what we do offer.
Yeah, so just, we're just open late hours. I know that OBH does also provide great services as well. But if you need something late evening hours, we are definitely available. We're open to 8 p.m. in person and 10 p.m. Virtually. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, before we wrap, do we have any other questions from the group or anything that the panelists would like to say before we end?
I'd like to say that this was a great format and a great conversation, and that we need to have this more often, especially for our Black and Brown communities. It's not often talked about. They feel like they don't get as much support. So I applaud OBH for having this conversation, and look forward to hearing more in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anything else?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tatiana from BMS Family Health and Wellness Centers. I definitely agree with Selena. This is a much needed conversation that needs to happen in the community. And that conversation is something that I wish our patient and our community members can definitely could hear from and take in. And I did appreciate Mr. Phillip, his candid personal touch that he had to it from being a provider to experience that loss and that grief, that he was able to turn around. Not as a parent, I can only imagine. I don't even want to imagine. I don't have any kids, so I can't even bear to imagine what you had to go through. Again, my condolences. So it's something that definitely the community need to hear.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Philip, did you want to respond?
Yes, I just want to say again, the inspiring moment of being able to touch those that were very brave in sharing their questions and their concerns, because again, we must be honest, we work for the community, right? And we have to keep that up front. And sometimes community members feel as we're doing them a favor, and it's partly on our approach. We have to be humble and we have to be honest. And today for me was a moment of being confronted with honesty. Now, sharing my experience in the traumatic situation for me in return allows me to become more and more motivated, because the community that we help is not by we strangers because we don't know names. We don't become strangers after we exchange information and education. So we have an internal obligation as well as a moral So I really think the fact that we were able to put this out there. And again, the young lady said to be able to give that information to others and the information numbers and stuff hopefully be provided so that they can make the call or we can call them. And I thank you very much for that.
Nancy, I just wanted to say thank you all for, this is Janet O again. I just wanted to say thank you all for the services that you guys are providing, and I'm going to speak on me and the community that we're grateful that we're grateful to know that that you guys are considering and that we're not forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Janet. Okay, our outpatient number has been placed in the chat. Did our panel want to say goodbye before we wrap up?
Let's not suffer in silence.
All right. Dr. Archer?
Thank you all for participating and joining both to the panel and all the community members that joined the talk. I really, really appreciate it. And again, I want to stress that this shouldn't be just a one-off. This should be what we now decide to do. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Dr. Sutton?
Yes, thank you all for joining and for sharing. My heart has been touched by what you shared during the question and answer, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you. And Kino, did you want to say anything? You still on? You still?
Yes, I got it. Fine. I just want to say it's been a great opportunity. You know, I would love to see more open panel discussions based upon mental health, you know, particularly amongst our community members. And it's just great experience. I want everybody just to take something with them. You know, I don't care what it is, but I just hope that you take something with you from today and you're able to internalize it, right? Make it your own, and then share that with someone else, you know, because we're no good to others if we can't help ourselves. So primarily help yourself, you know, and take what it is that you have within you and take it into the community and help someone else, you know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've lost Dr. Carlson. But I want to thank everybody for taking part in our Lunch and Learn today. We appreciate your feedback. We will be having this posted on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page. If for those working at the hospitals, it will be on our intranet. So you can go back and listen again and again and take a little bit more out of it each time you hear. Next week, we'll be doing a similar Lunch and Learn, but it will be on maternal and child health. I wish everyone a wonderful day, and we will be back with you again soon. Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.